Auntie Ellie is a large woolly sheep. She lives happily with all the other sheep on Gosling Farm. In the summertime, Auntie Ellie spends most of her time down by the river, in the shade of a large weeping willow, where she can watch over all the lambs as they run and jump around her. One morning in June, Little Red Tractor awoke to a loud commotion above his cab. Overnight, 5 swallow chicks had hatched and they were screeching loudly in their nest. The parents flashed in and out of the barn, their beaks full of food for their hungry babies. Little Red Tractor felt happy as Stan pushed open the barn door, letting in a shaft of warm sunlight. "My goodness," he said, "what a noise those young swallows are making." In the farmyard, the chickens were proudly strutting about, followed by their newly hatched chicks. In the pig field, several young piglets pushed and shoved each other at their feeding trough. "Come on, Little Red Tractor," said Stan. "We are going haymaking today." Little Red Tractor chugged off to Middle Field. When they got there, Stan hooked Little Red Tractor onto the hay turning machine. This funny-looking thing turns the newly cut hay so that the sun can dry it on all sides. Little Red Tractor knew that this was a very important job because without hay, the farm animals would not have enough to eat in the cold winter. For nearly 2 hours, Little Red Tractor chugged up and down the meadow, getting hotter and hotter. "Right," said Stan as they reached the bottom of the field. "Let's take a break." When his engine was switched off, Little Red Tractor gave a sigh of relief. Stan sat down beneath an old oak tree and took a long drink from his bottle of lemonade. Patch trotted over to the little brook for a drink of cool water. Suddenly, Patch barked and Little Red Tractor hooted loudly. "What's up?" said Stan, getting up to take a look. The sheep were grazing happily in the upper meadow, but lower down by the river, something was happening. All the lambs who had been sitting quietly with Auntie Ellie were bouncing up and down. "You all right, Patch?" said Stan. "Good girl. Come on, Little Red Tractor. We had better go and see what all the fuss is about." Stan unhooked the hay-turning machine, and in no time at all they were bouncing over the bumpy meadow at full speed towards the river. Patch raced along in front. When they got there, Stan, Patch and Little Red Tractor were surprised to find Auntie Ellie standing in the middle of the river looking very wet and very sorry for herself. "Auntie Ellie," cried Stan, "what are you doing?" Auntie Ellie bleated a very mournful reply. Poor Auntie Ellie. She had been very hot under her thick woolly coat and gone into the river to cool off. But she had gone too far, and now she was stuck in the mud. Stan scratched his head. "Well, you're too heavy for me to lift, Auntie Ellie, and that's a fact. I think this is a job for Little Red Tractor." Stan climbed back into Little Red Tractor's cab, turned him around and backed him close to the river. A quick change into wellies, and then, carrying a thick rope, Stan began to wade into the cool water. He had almost got to Auntie Ellie when Patch barked a warning. Little Red Tractor was rolling backwards into the river. "Oh, Lord," cried Stan, "I've forgotten to put the handbrake on. Hold on, little red tractor," he shouted. "I'm coming." Stan scrambled back to Little Red Tractor and drove him back onto the bank. This time he made sure that the handbrake was pulled on very tight. Stan plodded back through the water with mud squelching under his wellies. "Hold still, old girl," he said as he carefully passed the rope under Auntie Ellie's middle and made a harness behind her front legs. Auntie Ellie was ready, but as Stan turned to go back to the bank, one of his boots got stuck in the mud. He pulled, he twisted, he wobbled on one leg, and then, oh dear, oh Lord! Stan lost his balance and sat down in the stream with the water swirling around his waist. "Botheration!" he shouted as a little silver fish wriggled out of his welly boot. By this time, most of the sheep had gathered on the bank, gazing at Stan as he floundered about in the water. Auntie Ellie gave a rather watery bleat. The lambs bounced up and down, squeaking loudly. And Patch, thinking it was a new game, found a stick so that she could join in the fun too. Stan slowly squelched his way to the bank. As he climbed out of the water, he felt sure that the sheep were grinning and that even Little Red Tractor seemed amused. "Okay," he said to Little Red Tractor, "now let's see if we can get it right this time." Stan eased the tractor forward. "Very, very gently does it," he said. "Slowly, slowly, and here she comes." Looking like a great big woolly sponge, Auntie Ellie began to glide gently towards the bank. The lambs bounced up and down with excitement. Patch dropped her stick and barked. The sheep joined in, and at long last, Auntie Ellie climbed out of the river. Stan untied the rope, and with her wool so full of water that she could hardly shake herself, Auntie Ellie ambled up the meadow to lie down in the sun to dry. Stan and the Little Red Tractor chugged back up the meadow to the hayfield. "Well done, Little Red Tractor," said Stan. "I don't think Auntie Ellie will go for a swim again in a hurry." Little Red Tractor hooted loudly as they started turning the hay again. They drove past Stan's wellies, which were steaming in the hot sunshine. Stan chuckled. "Tell me, Little Red Tractor," he said, "what do you think will drive first, the hay, my wellies, or Auntie Ellie?" Auntie Ellie is an ewe. That's the proper name for a female sheep. Do you think Auntie Ellie could be somewhere amongst all these ewes? Hello, who's this? Is it the real Patch? I wonder what she's looking at. I think she's guarding the lambs, don't you? Yes, you're right. These lambs are only a day old. No wonder Patch is keeping an eye on them. Some of the ewes have 2 or 3 lambs at a time, and that means they can't always provide enough milk. That's when the farmer lends a hand. I don't think that's Stan. He's not wearing a cap. It may not be the real thing, but this lamb loves it. This is the same lamb 2 weeks later. Do you know what the lambs are eating? Is it hay or is it straw? What do you think? The way it's tucking in, it must taste like chocolate ice cream. Have you noticed that all the lambs have a tag or coloured marking? That helps the farmer to return a lost lamb to its mother. Our farmer keeps the lambs in a sheltered pen so they don't get cold. But later in the spring, he puts them out in the meadow. The lamb we saw feeding from the bottle is now 2 months old. It was a hot August morning. The sky was very blue, and the hills behind Gosling Farm were deep purple. "Come on, gal," Stan said to Patch. "We must go and check the corn." Patch was not sure what checking the corn meant, but it sounded fun, so she wagged her tail in agreement and ran ahead of Stan as he made his way to Topacre Field. In Topacre Field, the golden wheat swayed gently in the breeze. Stan picked some grain and rubbed it in the palm of his hands. He thought for a moment, looked up at the clear blue sky, and then said, "It's ready, Patch. Let's go and phone Mr. Jones." Half an hour later, Patch was in the field next to Little Red Tractor's barn when she heard a strange noise. She sat up and listened very hard. Something was coming up the lane. It was getting nearer and louder. Suddenly, the grumbling sound became a roaring noise as round the corner came an enormous yellow machine. The old barn door shook as it rumbled into the yard. It was Mr. Jones from Beach Farm with his combine harvester. Patch ran for cover. The chickens rushed squawking into the barn, and the piglets ran helter-skelter for their sheds. With a cheery wave to Stan, Mr. Jones drove through the yard and up towards Topacre Field. Stan jumped into Little Red Tractor's cab and started his engine. With his empty trailer bouncing over the rough ground, Little Red Tractor followed the noisy yellow machine. When they arrived in Topacre Field, Stan and Mr. Jones looked at the wheat and had a chat. Then Mr. Jones climbed back into the cab of the combine. Clouds of chaff and dust filled the air. Rabbits ran from the field to take cover in the hedgerows as the big yellow machine started to work. After a while, Mr. Jones waved and Stan drove Little Red Tractor up beside the yellow combine. "Keep her steady, Little Red Tractor," shouted Stan. "We don't want to lose any." Stan gave Mr. Jones a signal. Mr. Jones pulled a lever, and millions of golden wheat grains were pumped out of the combine into the trailer. When the job was done, Stan and Mr. Jones sat down and drank a glass of lemonade. All was quiet once more, and Patch, who had been keeping well out of the way, ran across the fresh stubble to lie in the shade of the little red tractor. When they had finished their lemonade, Stan thanked Mr. Jones, and the great yellow machine lumbered off down the lane and back to Beach Farm. Patch jumped up into Little Red Tractor's cab with a sigh of relief. "Move over," said Stan as he climbed in beside her. "We've got more work to do." Back in the yard, Stan shoveled all the grain into sacks. He carried some into the barn for the chickens' winter feed. The rest he loaded back onto Little Red Tractor's trailer. Then he said, "Come on, Patch, we're going up to Stumpy's mill." The grassy track leading out of Gosling Farm was very bumpy. When they turned into Mill Lane, Patch could see Stumpy's mill. It stood on high ground above Gosling Farm, where on all but the calmest of days there was enough wind to turn the great wooden sails. "Hello, hello," said Stumpy the miller with a friendly smile. "What have we here?" "6 sacks of wheat to be ground into flour, please, Stumpy," said Stan. "Right you are," said Stumpy, "but first we have to get the sacks up to the top of the mill." Stumpy lowered the clanking sack lift as Stan backed Little Red Tractor's trailer into position. Then, as Stumpy and Stan worked, Patch sat in the late afternoon sunshine and watched. When all the sacks had been hoisted into the windmill, Stan climbed the creaking wooden stairs and began to help Stumpy pour the golden grain into the hopper. "Hang on a tick," said Stumpy as the air filled with dust. "I'll open the window." As he swung the window open, Stumpy gasped in surprise. "Rusty," he cried, "it's Rusty, my kitten. She's out there on the windmill sail. Now come on, Rusty, you come back in here." "I don't think she can," said Stan. "I think she's got stuck, but don't worry, Stumpy. I'm sure I can reach her if I just—" Stan climbed out of the window onto the sail. "Oh, he said to himself as he glanced down at the ground, "it's a long way to fall. Whose idea was this?" He stretched out a hand and gently lifted the kitten off the sail and tucked her under his arm. "Got her!" he shouted. Then he paused. Stumpy, I think I'm stuck. I can't move backwards because I can't see where I'm going." "Oh, Lord," said Stumpy, thinking hard. "Tell you what, Stan, if I ease the brake off, the sails will go round and take you down to the ground." "OK," said Stan, "but please be careful. I don't want to spend the rest of the day going round and round on your windmill." Stumpy slowly let the brake handle off, and with a creak and a groan, the heavy wooden sails began to turn. "Whoa, whoa, hang on," wailed Stan. "I'm turning upside down." And he was. But fortunately, as the great sails continued to turn, Stan soon found that he was the right way up again. Stumpy gently put the brake back on. "There you are, Stan," he shouted. But when Stumpy looked out of the window, Stan was upside down again. "Help!" shouted Stan. "I can't hold on for much longer." Stumpy quickly let the brake off and Stan moved towards the ground and the right way up. "Stop it there," he shouted, and this time Stumpy put the brake on just right. but it still left Stan a long way off the ground. "It's too far for me to jump," shouted Stan. Stumpy looked out of the window. "Hold tight," he shouted back. "I'll get the little red tractor." Stumpy ran down the mill staircase 3 steps at a time. He quickly drove Little Red Tractor under the sail. Stan jumped down onto the cab and then down to the ground. Patch barked with excitement, Stumpy shouted hooray, and Little Red Tractor hooted his horn. Rusty wondered what all the fuss was about. Stan wiped his brow. "Phew, that was quite nasty up there for a moment," he said. "Well, I think you were very brave, Stan," said Stumpy's wife, Elsie. "I've brought you both a cup of tea and a biscuit for Patch." After tea, they went back to work. The 4 giant sails creaked loudly as they turned slowly in the gentle breeze, grinding the wheat into flour. As each sack was filled, Stan carried it to the trailer, and in no time at all, the job was done. Stumpy didn't charge Stan because he was so pleased that Rusty was safe. It had been a long day. The harvest moon was shining by the time Little Red Tractor headed for home. Patch snuggled her nose against Stan's arm as they turned into Gosling Farm. She was happy to be home and very happy that Stan had come safely down to earth. I think this tractor's too big to be the real Little Red Tractor, don't you? The farmer is getting the field ready for sowing with a harrow. This is the seed corn. It's the very best of the wheat saved from last year's harvest. Today the farmer is sowing wheat. Soon it will start to grow. First of all, it looks like a field of grass. But then it gets taller. The ears of grain start to form. And as the sun does its work, they ripen and turn a golden colour. A combine like the one you saw Mr. Jones driving will soon come to this field to harvest all the valuable grains of wheat. In this windmill, the miller is about to start the sails. The sails turn the stout wooden shafts and massive wheels and cogs that drive the millstones. The stones are over 1 metre across. The grains of wheat are ground into flour between the bottom stone, which stays still, and the top stone, which turns. In the light breeze that's blowing today, The miller expects to fill one of these sacks in an hour. Do you remember how Stumpy and Stan hoisted the sacks of wheat up to the top of the mill? In this mill, the sacks are hoisted up by a sack hoist, which uses power provided by the wind and the great wooden sails. There aren't many working windmills left in the country. Many of them have been turned into interesting homes. Others were never windmills at all, but wind pumps. And then there were water mills. They use fast-flowing water to turn the millstones. Most modern mills use electricity to drive massive rollers which crush the grain into flour. But this mill is different. They're not making flour for bread. This is semolina. And do you know what they make from semolina apart from puddings? Watch carefully and you might get a clue. Have you got it? You're right, they're making pasta shapes, and best of all, in this enormous machine, they're making spaghetti.